This is Tracy Jones, president of Tremendous Leadership, and we are here today talking with our newest author. Hot off the presses is our first fantasy book that we have published with our co-authors, and it is called Raven Naelo and the Artifact of the Stolen Souls. So we are delighted to have Anne-Marie on the line with us today. Hello, Anne-Marie.
Hi there.
Thanks so much. And Anne-Marie and I have been longtime friends, and she first started talking about this book many, many moons ago. So we'll go into a little bit about that, the creative process. But Anne-Marie, I want to talk to you, and the authors can see the cover on the back here. Where did you develop the detailed world that Raven lives in? And tell our listeners a little bit about what that is.
Wow. Well, actually, it started with Rachel, the other co-author, many, many years ago. She was a huge D&D fan, and plus she used to play with her cousin Kevin and their friend Deacon when they were much younger. And one day they just decided to come up with this really cool new concept for a campaign. And the funny thing is like it started with 4 characters that are currently in the book. Actually, Raven was not at the beginning of the campaign. It was her father, Igor. Oh. So they kind of did it started with this amazing campaign, and it really just grew from there. And then, you know, when you start playing campaigns, they kind of grow. So, you know, you start with this one, which is where you find out about Omelet City. And then the next thing you know, you move on to the next part of the campaign that you're like, oh, now we have to go and battle some orcs. Well, where would they come from? And be like, oh, then you create that city. And that's how it just kept growing and became our entire world, which is called Euphrasia. So yeah, that's basically the backstory of that.
I love it. And how long did that process, how long was Rachel and her friends building out that kind of campaign? How long did that take?
Oh, I mean, I'm sure off and on for years.
Okay.
When it's about doing a campaign, if it's a one that you really enjoy, you can always just keep going back and revisiting it and just creating new battles with that campaign. So yeah. So it can kind of continued for a while, and then, you know, and then it was something happened to one of the characters, but I can't tell you what happened to one of the characters because it would ruin the book.
Okay.
But yeah.
Well, speaking of the characters, you allude to the fact that you've mentioned before, some of these characters are based on real people, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so Can you explain that? They say life imitates art, or art imitates life. Explain to me how they found their way in there, and will any of our readers recognize themselves?
Possibly. So when you do any kind of a campaign, you like to pull in, you know, pieces of yourself. So like Gideon and Short were actually characters that her cousin Kevin had helped develop. So like there's a lot of his quirkiness in some of them and his humor and stuff like that. So, you know, so a little bit of, you know, his ideas went into building like those characters. And then Rachel has always loved being a rogue. So, you know, she liked the idea of Igor, which then transitioned into creating Raven, who she put a lot of herself into, a lot of the playfulness and the sarcasm and the independence and stuff like that. So basically the Raven character has a lot of her personality. And then when it got to the point now where it was going to become a book, she said, hey, do you want to have a character? And I was like, well, of course I do. Who wouldn't want to be in a book? So I got the opportunity to build this character named Avalon, who is she's an elf and she's an archer. And the funny part about that is like I'm terrible at playing video games. So whenever I would agree to play video games with friends or family, I would always say, I need to be an elf archer that can just stand back and shoot, because that's literally all I could do. I just thought, well, this is going to be really fun. I'm going to create an elf archer because that's what I know. And there's a lot of my personalities. You know, she's a little bit of a smart aleck, and she has no problems. Yeah, a little bit, right? But she's very determined, and she's very team oriented, and a stickler for rules and things like that. So yeah, so it was really fun to build that character. But then the best one though is one Christmas, Rachel had said to her two boys, "Hey, listen," they were early teenagers at that time. She's like, "Listen, we've been talking about this idea of creating this book. Would you guys like to be in it?" And they're just like, "Yeah, sure, okay." And she's like, "For Christmas, what I want from you guys is to write a one-page story, or just like some kind of ideas about, like a backstory for a character that you would like to be." And so the oldest, Austin, he wrote the character of Ashade, who is, you'll learn all about Ashade in the book. So he created the character of Ashade, and Jared created the character of Jars. And I can't really go into what the backstory was because you'll learn about that obviously in the book. So, but they each created these beautiful characters. And even throughout the process of starting the writing recently and getting through all this, they've been integral to being soundboards. So like, we would always say to them, would your character say this or do this? Or what do you think about us building your character into this situation? And they've been great helps. And so has Kevin with given us help with the backstories on some of the characters he helped develop. And also like all this, him and Rachel spent a lot of time with like the spells and stuff like that. So it's just been a collaboration of love from the whole family aspect.
That's awesome. And what gave you pause? I mean, the whole fantasy and game playing, the whole genre is a creative process. And there's tons of our readers that love this type of book that probably have all kinds of things in their mind like this. What gave you pause and the collaboration to actually, though, not just write it down, but actually go forward and publish it into a book? Because that's a big step. What made you take that next step?
Basically, just the more we would just jokingly throw out to people, like family or friends, be like, "Oh, we've got, we kind of have this idea for this book," and would like just give them a little bit of a snippet about it. And that's kind of how it started. So like, just a backstory real quick, we had gone through cleaning up to get ready to move, and Rachel found her paperwork from this campaign that had happened like, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago. I mean, it was a long time ago. And then, and then she found these papers, and then she just started, telling us about the stories, and then talking to friends and families about the story. And the more we would talk about it, the more people were getting excited about it. They're like, "Oh my gosh, we want to learn more. We want to know more." And that's kind of what was the catalyst to get us to go, you know what? We should really, really take this seriously and look at making this a story. So that's basically what it was.
I love it. And I love it because those of you that know me know I read like leadership book, leader. And I love it. I love it. I love it. But this was so nice and refreshing. It took me back to my youth where I would read C.S. Lewis or Tolkien or The Hobbit, or I love the genre, and it was really great to get back and have the time to work on this with you. So to let the listeners know, I saw it from a different perspective where you first interacted with me as a publisher, but how long did it take you to actually write the book? I know you talked about it had been pouring out, but let's talk about the mechanical process of writing the book.
The mechanical, well, I mean, It took like 8 to 10 years for us to kind of write a draft and then decide not to do it, and then write a little bit more, and then we lost it because the computer had crashed on us and it didn't save right. And so, but once we got through all of those, like the actual process, like once we sat down with you and said, "Hey, we have this idea," it took us 8 months to just get it down on paper. Just get it out of our brain onto the paper, just to be able to have something physically to write. And then it was probably another maybe 2 or 3 months, I think, that it took us to get to you a finalized, ready to at least share with an editor draft.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's great for the listeners. You don't just sit down and write War and Peace, right? Right at the beginning,
no, exactly.
And you were really good about coming back and you drip it out and say, "What about this?" And we look at it and say, "Tease this out," or, we all need encouragement because writing is, it's scary, you know, and you're pouring yourself out there, and you know,
Absolutely.
and so you kept going back and forth, and it really is, writing is a very, very collaborative process. So what was your favorite part of the writing process?
Well, Rachel's favorite part was dialogue. She
Ah, okay.
absolutely loves being able to give these characters a voice.
Mm-hmm.
And
Love
like
that.
that is her specialty. Like, yeah, exactly. I mean, she is so good at being able to distinctly write a character. And when you're reading it, you you can see the definition of each character. You know how sometimes when you read a book, all the characters sound the same, act the
Yes.
same, and that's kind of like really boring. Not the way that she writes. Like you definitely see the distinct personalities in each of these characters. For me personally, I'm the detail girl. Like I love what most people dislike. I
Mm-hmm.
love going in and taking a scene and adding the meat to it. Like
Mm-hmm.
taking a scene that just says they walked through a meadow and instead being able to say they walked through the meadow and then describe the flowers and the animals, and like that's what I love. I love painting that picture
Love
for
it.
the reader.
I love it. And just for the listeners out there, that's wonderful that because the dialogue and the set and the context or the setting are both critically important. You know, like even in a play, the backdrops, you got to have that, but then you got to have the words that carry it. But that there are so many people out there that if you're not strong in one area, because most of us are not good across the board at every aspect of writing, ask for help. And there's so many great resources out there to help you really nail down it. So what was the most inspiring thing for you and Rachel during the writing process, other than when it was done?
Oh, yeah, other than when it was finished, complete,
That was
woo, done.
exciting. That was exciting. Uh-huh.
It was. I think for both of us, it was just again the excitement of people. Like the closer we were getting, the more we were doing. Just the excitement from family and friends, and even just random strangers that I had happened to talk to and say, oh, you know, like they're over a coffee at a meeting, being like, oh, you know, I'm helping write a book. Just the excitement from people of
Yes.
hearing how much, you know, they really enjoyed the little bit of snippets that we would share. I
Yes.
think was the most inspiring, and just knowing that people wanted to hear what we had to say about this world.
That is exciting. And that now you have the book is in print, and we'll talk in a little bit about how people get in touch and get it. But now that you've been doing events or getting it out there, tell me about what the interaction with the fans, because that's a whole nother world once you publish it, getting the book out there. Share with us a little bit about some of the things you're working on to get it out there.
Oh, absolutely. So we've done, a little bit of social media, the basics, but for event wise, we've got some things set up with Barnes and Nobles coming up in November. We just
Awesome.
did this, yeah. So we just did this great event called Save the Fear, where it was 3 days conference where we sat and we were able to interact with fans of the genre and gaming and stuff like that, and we had some great interactions. I mean, even to the point where a gentleman had bought the book the first day. By the third day, he had finished reading some of it and
Oh,
approached us and said, "Hey, I work for a role playing company that happened to be there as a vendor as well." He's like, "Have you thought about turning this into your very own type of D&D role playing?" And we're
yes.
like,
Yeah. Yes. That's
sure,
awesome.
exactly." So yeah, so that was an amazing experience. And again, it's to show anybody, like any of your listeners, you just never know what
Right.
happens if you just take the leap.
Well,
And then we've had some
yeah.
great, yeah, and we've had some other great ideas. I mean, we went back home up to Pottsville area, which is from where I'm from, and participated in a borough day and had a great reaction at the Alchemist Co., which is a gaming shop. They
Mm.
hosted us. It was amazing, amazing. And but I have to admit, we're totally geeking out here. We didn't have a vendor. We were just there walking around to the RetroCon, and we went and we actually met the guy from Buck Rogers that plays
No.
Buck Rogers,
No.
Gil
No.
Greer. Yes, yes, yes,
What?
yes. And
That was like
yes,
my favorite show.
and
Did you say you met Gil Gerard? Is that what you said?
yes, yes, and also Felix, the guy
He
that
stole
played
my heart.
Stacy.
Oh no,
Yep,
are you
yep,
serious? Oh my God. That
yep,
was growing up, that was my
100%.
favorite.
Yeah, well, same with Rachel. It was one of her favorite shows, and we went there, and we were standing there talking to him, and it was we actually had gotten there really early, and we're one of the first people in, and we got a bunch extra time with him, and we just happened to say to him, "Oh yeah, we just read a book," and he's like, "Oh yeah," he's like, "Where's my copy?" And we looked at him, we're like, "You're joking?" He's like, "No, where's my
Oh
copy?"
my gosh.
And we always, here's the one thing I'm going to tell to everybody: always make sure you carry a
Yes.
book with you in your
Yes.
car, because you never ever
Yes.
know. Rachel runs back out to the car, grabs the book. We come in. Here's the funny part. So we had just got an autograph signature from Gil and from Felix on a picture that we had, right? So we came in and we had the book, and he's like, "Are you gonna sign it?" And we're like, $50, and he just laughed, and we obviously are. So we signed it and stuff like that, and like they were so blown away about, like, they loved the cover art,
Oh,
and
I
they
know.
loved the blurb, and we got a picture of it of us together with both of them with their books, and yeah, it was a highlight. It was just so much fun
I
knowing
can't believe
that
it.
they, just to
Well,
know that it's out there,
it
and
is out there,
you
but
know.
you work it. I mean, I think a lot of people will publish, and having published many books and helping people publish many other books, there's this weird thing that if you just put it up online, everybody's going to start buying it. And it's like, no,
Yep.
you have to get out there and grow and meet your fan base. The marketing,
Absolutely.
even pay to play stuff does not work. And people will want to buy the book because they'll love you. And when you get
Mhm.
excited about it, but if they don't see you, it doesn't take off. It just doesn't.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I love that. So what advice do you have for people who want to write a fantasy book? Because I'm sure there's a ton of people out there that, I get hit up with a lot of leadership books, but I mean, why not a fantasy book? What's your advice in particular for somebody writing that genre?
I think that you just, like, it's like anything else, you have to just go for it. And it's like you said before, don't sweat the small stuff.
Yeah.
Like, don't worry if you don't have everything ready to go, and don't worry about if you don't have all your characters developed. Like, we started this book and I think we had like 9 or 10 characters. It ended with 21, because when you start sitting down and you start fleshing out these stories, it will write itself. It really truly does. You just have to know your beginning, your middle, and your end,
Oh my gosh,
and
that's so
get
solid. Yeah.
truly get behind a character. Like, you have to know and feel and love your not only just your main character, but all the characters, because if they can't speak to the writers or to the readers, it's not going to go anywhere.
I
Like,
love
you
it.
have to really, this is my personal opinion. I think good characters are stronger than a good world.
Beautifully said. Speaking of
Yeah,
that,
like,
who is one of your favorite, for one or two of your favorite characters? Tell the
absolutely.
readers a little, or the listeners a little bit more. I've read it. We publish it, but tell them a little bit about the story and some of the characters.
Sure. So obviously the main character is Raven Naelo, and she's a rogue, and it follows her through rogue training with their guardians. There's other characters that are studying to be kind of like protectors of their realms. And then there's also her family and friends, and then there's a lot of bad guys.
Mm.
So but just to kind of touch upon a couple characters that we really enjoy. So, like, for example, like I said earlier, like, Rachel loves Raven. Like, she put a lot of heart into that character, but Raven wasn't her favorite character to write. She loved writing the comedic character Short, who's
Yeah.
a dwarf.
Yeah.
And and that's the pun of it. Like, he's a dwarf, he is short, and his name is Short. So
And Rachel's
that's
really
like,
tall.
yes, exactly. So, like, that was her favorite thing. Like, her whole thing was just about developing the humor of this character. And then again, I helped develop I helped develop Avalon,
Mhm.
but my favorite character as a reader is Isera, who is she's this nymph, and half nymph, and she is just funny and spunky, and she's just a lot of fun to read from a character perspective.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I love it.
And you'll always find characters that might be a little bit harder to write for, And that's okay too. You struggle through it, and you just have to be patient with those, because something will turn around and go, oh my goodness, it was right in front of me. Of course we should take it this direction. Or, oh, of course he or she should have that quirk. And it eventually does work out.
Well, that's beautiful. And as somebody who's working on a book now and a dissertation, your words about the writing process, and I'm glad I gave it to you because now you're throwing it back to me. It'll all work out. Just start writing. I mean, I look at my chapters now and I'm like, this is pathetic. It's not even a straw man. And all of a sudden, it starts flowing out. And now I look at it and I'm like, this is gold. So there's a discipline that I saw you guys go back and rewrite, but you never lost the joy of it. And you were a joy to work with because you were so excited about the story and how it was unfolding. And yes, there are minutes in nail biting where you're like, what are we doing? But you guys, you kept through it. And it was wonderful to see you, just the joy, because a fantasy book should be really fun and cool and suspenseful. And this one really is. Yeah.
Right. And, and I think that is the last thing that, I think to leave the listeners, anybody that's interested in writing a book, is that there are going to be ups and downs. There are, exciting parts about getting a book through the processes, and other times you're like going, wow, I didn't know we have to do this, or wow, I didn't even foresee that coming. So you work through it. Don't let anything get you frustrated, because the end result is that book in your hand, and it makes it worth all the while.
I love it. So where can people, Anne-Marie, get a hold of your book? And tell them about your Facebook, how to reach out to you, all that good stuff.
Absolutely. Well, they can purchase it. We're asking people to hit up our website, which is www.rafischer, that's FISCHER, authors.com, or they can also find us on Facebook, which is Facebook/Raven Naelo, and that's RAVEN NAELO. And then also for those people that would like to do an ebook, you can actually get an ebook on Amazon, and also Barnes and Noble is carrying it on ebook as well.
Awesome. And you've got on Facebook, you have all your events coming up, and people can reach out to you, because I know there's a lot of wonderful for the holidays, different book conferences and stuff. They can contact you there to see if you would show up. Okay.
Yes. We're actually, the next one we're doing is going to be down in Shippensburg, actually, at the book fair.
Oh, fantastic. Awesome.
Yes.
Well, it's a great time. And then tell your readers, because anybody that's got it knows how this ends. And please tell people, what are your future plans? What are your future plans for Raven?
Oh, there's a book 2 and a book 3, and, maybe a comic book maybe in the near future.
Okay.
And
there you are.
Yeah. There's going to be there's a lot of exciting stuff going on. Book 2 we have about 5 chapters written right now with book 2, and it's fleshing out, and a lot of really, really cool ideas for book 3. So we hope everybody picks it up and enjoys it.
Excellent. All right, folks. Well, to our listeners, Anne-Marie, thank you guys. Thank you, and Rachel, for including me in this journey. It's a gorgeous book on the outside and the inside. And I know you want you to enjoy it. Our team here loved working on it. And you got the word from Anne-Marie where to get a hold of it. You can reach out to her, share it on Facebook. And again, Anne-Marie, thank you so much. And we hope this just goes far and wide, and look forward to the next one.
Thank you so much.
All right, all. Bye-bye. Have a tremendous rest of the week.